Hi. Too many people see estate planning as one big, massive 1,000-piece puzzle. They look at the pieces and they get so overwhelmed they can't even get started. But actually, you only need a few pieces that matter most to the stage in life that you're in at that moment, instead of trying the whole big puzzle in one sitting. When you hear that everyone needs an estate plan, we're talking about very different levels of estate planning depending on the stage of life you're in. Here's what I mean. Let's say hi to Joe. He's in his mid 20s, single, not married, has a decent job, but not saving a lot because he loves spending his discretionary income with his friends. He's dating, so lots of expensive dinners. So his biggest estate planning needs at this stage in his life is to plan for incapacity. If something happens to him and he's not able to make decisions for himself, he will need two documents. One is the healthcare proxy, someone to make medical decisions on his behalf. And the second document is a power of attorney, someone to pay his utilities, his rent, deposit his paychecks. Without a power of attorney, his finances would come to a halt. In a few years' time, he did marry that girl, and now they have a young family. Not a lot of assets, and his biggest, most urgent estate planning needs right now is to guard the children. He wants to make sure if anything happens to him or his wife, that his children will have a guardian that will take really good care of them, not someone that the judge or the probate court pick for them. To do that, he's going to need a will to nominate a guardian for their children. With just a will, they will still end up in probate if they die. But again, estate planning is an iterative process. At this stage, if they're not able to do a full-blown estate plan with a trust, the most urgent need is to make sure that they have a will and they've nominated a guardian for their children. All right, let's move on a few more years. They work hard and now they maybe own a small home, no longer renting. The most urgent estate planning priority is to avoid probate. They now have enough assets that if they end up in probate, it would be quite agonizing. To avoid probate, they're going to need a trust. A trust often is accompanied by a will, but it's not a regular will. It's a pour-over will. It's like a safety net. If there's any assets that they had forgotten to put inside the trust, the pour-over will make sure that the court knows that assets should be poured over into the trust. Okay, now let's move on a few more years. They have a growing family. In fact, there is a 50% chance that our guy Joe is not with the same spouse anymore. That means blended families, and they have accumulated more assets. Perhaps they have a business now or a rental property, and maybe they've upgraded to a bigger home. So their priority at this stage in life is to protect their wealth. Okay. Question: what is Joe protecting his wealth from? You'll be surprised. He needs to do some tax planning to protect his wealth from Uncle Sam. He needs to protect his wealth from children who may not be ready to receive the inheritance outright if something happens to Joe and his wife. So they will need to plan to maybe stagger the distribution of the assets. If Joe is in a blended family, is he concerned that his surviving spouse could remarry and disinherit Joe's biological children? Or if his assets are distributed outright to his children, then what's to protect those assets from being vulnerable to his children's creditors, lawsuits? even his children's future divorces. So a lot more planning is involved at this stage of his life, not just the standard trust will, healthcare proxy, and power of attorney documents, but perhaps also planning ahead with subtrusts. Some examples of subtrusts would be a marital trust to protect Joe's assets for his children in case his surviving wife remarries. Another example of subtrusts are holdover trusts to hold the assets and distribute them to the children in a more staggered manner when they're more mature. And if they've accumulated assets that are getting close to exceeding the estate tax exemption limit, they might have to plan for a credit shelter trust. So these are all subtrusts that are built into the revocable living trust to protect their wealth, which is their biggest estate planning goal right now. Now let's roll a few decades forward, and Joe here has children who have their own children. Joe's now a grandparent. His thoughts about estate planning is not just limited to his children. Now he's thinking about generational wealth, how to protect his wealth so they can continue for generations, not just be spent completely by his children. So you see, estate planning is not a one and done task. It's a very iterative process. So don't give yourself so much pressure that you need to get it done perfectly the first time. In fact, when you take it step by step, you'll be able to make more progress. You'll be able to feel more confident. You have more clarity than trying to solve the entire puzzle in one sitting. And if you are feeling a little behind in your estate planning goals, don't get stressed. You are probably busy taking care of the children, raising them, playing with them, making connections with them, forming relationships. Is that not a very important part of legacy planning? But when you do have a breather, do inch yourself forward. Take forward steps to protect your family.